He's going to score. McCoy into the end zone. Touchdown! Touchdown, Buffalo!
Good morning, Bills fans. Welcome to our Monday morning breakdown. I'm John Murphy, along with Chris Brown, Bills Insider from BuffaloBills.com. We do this every Monday. We talk with Chris and I talk a little bit, talk with you a little bit about the Bills game the day before. You can catch us on Facebook, on Twitter, on YouTube Live. We're here every Monday at this time at 10 a.m. Coming off another Buffalo Bills loss, the 31-20 loss yesterday to the Los Angeles Chargers. First ever start, Chris, for Josh Allen, which was his significant, and who knows, maybe someday it'll be historic, right? This is how his career got started.
Right, and you're glad that it at least ended with a touchdown pass, his first career touchdown pass to Kelvin Benjamin at the end of the game. And, you know, there was good stuff in this game from him. I mean, he's 18 of 33 for 245. Yes, he had the 2 interceptions, but, you know, the touchdown pass. And I thought there were times where he wasn't afraid to take a risk and, you know, threw some passes into some tight spots.
He seemed to have command of the game, and by that I mean he didn't look like he was out of place. Obviously, the big arm on display, especially on that long pass to Zay Jones that he bobbled and then caught 57 yards on that play. But Josh, to me, seemed to have command of the game and command of the situation. He wasn't perfect by any means, but he seemed to be able to see the field, identify where to go with it. And I thought, in that sense, it was a pretty good start for him. And I thought that maybe was the best thing he did.
Demonstrated some leadership, too. I mean, after that drive where they scored some points, goes over to the defensive side of the ball, and he's trying to rally the troops, say, hey, get me a stop, let's get the ball back. Because the momentum had swung there for a short period of time in the third quarter. Granted, the Bills were still down a good deal of points. But, you know, then he gets the touchdown right at the very end, executing that 2-minute drive. It's not going to be noticed in the final stat sheet. But I even asked Josh after the game, you know, is this a little bit of momentum that you can carry into next week? And he said he thought they could.
I thought that was a beautiful pass. And that's really what they missed when they didn't have Josh Allen in the lineup. That ability to make plays, yes, with all the inexperience that he has, with the fact that he's just getting his feet wet, he still has the cannon arm, the rocket arm to make throws like this. Waiting, and then just firing it between 2 defenders right to Kelvin Benjamin for the touchdown. Yes, it was a garbage time touchdown, if you will, but still an important big play for Josh Allen. I thought that was pretty good. It wasn't all good for Josh Allen. Threw a couple of interceptions, and more than anything, Chris, I was a little dismayed by how long, and I understand first start, I was dismayed by how long he took sometimes to make up his mind and decide to throw it. That contributed to some of the 5 sacks he took in the game. Not all of them, not this one, for instance, but I think I guess it's maybe just not trusting what he sees or just getting his first look at real NFL defenses in action. I thought he was a little late sometimes on some of his throws.
Yeah, I mean, down at the scoreboard end of the field, I know he kind of rolled out to get away from some pressure. He had Charles Clay early on the play in the down and then waited a half second too long. And those windows, you know how fast they close in the NFL. And I actually asked him that very question, Murph, after the game. Was there an issue where at times you just weren't trusting what you saw? And he said, yeah, I do have to get better at trusting what I see. I think there's this inherent concern on the part of rookie quarterbacks where they feel like a defensive coordinator has something up their sleeve and there's something in that play to trick them. And I think between Coach Dable, Coach Culley, they've got to convince Josh, hey, if you see it, take it.
Yeah.
You know, because more often than not, his arm strength is still going to fit it in some places even if he feels the window's closing. So hopefully that's what happens here going forward, and he trusts more of what he sees out there. It's not like he doesn't put the time in the film room where he should not know. He does know. I think now he just has to trust what he's seeing out there.
I have a feeling that when they get in the film room and in the meeting room this week, it's going to be fairly easy for the coaching staff to identify with Josh, here's what went well, here's what went wrong. It was pretty much out there for everybody to see. All right, let's get into 4 down territory. 4 issues from yesterday's game that Chris and I want to focus on as we work through 4 down territory here. Obviously, a lot went wrong for the Bills in the loss yesterday right off the top of the game. But the story that everyone nationally is talking about is the wild, unexpected surprise retirement of veteran corner Vontae Davis at halftime. Got dressed at halftime and walked out of the locker room, walked away from his team. I've never heard anything like that, Chris. I think it's unheard of in the NFL. You don't do that in the middle of a game.
It's unprecedented. And, you know, I know he released a statement after the game explaining his whole rationale for doing it, but you want to retire, do it before the season starts. I mean, he played in the preseason. You can't tell me that all of a sudden the alarm bells went off in regular season week 2 that the game has passed you by. it was clear to me that he wasn't right in the preseason with some of the plays he was getting beat on. He looked very stiff, and granted, probably some of that is coming off of the groin surgery, but don't tell me you couldn't identify then and you needed this first game in week 2 to say, you know what? I'm actually done now. And I'm going to leave you guys in the lurch with Phillip Gaines out of the lineup and only 2 healthy corners. Are you kidding me? You can't do that to guys that you have worked with, sweat with out on the practice field in training camp and the whole offseason for the better part of 6 months and then say, yeah, you know what, guys, I'm good. No.
You just don't see it that way. It clearly shook up players in the Buffalo locker room, and veteran linebacker Lorenzo Alexander talked about it after the game.
You've seen anything like that in your NFL
Never
career?
have seen it ever. Pop Warner, high school, college, pros, never heard of it, never seen it. And it's just completely disrespectful to his teammates.
Did he say anything to you
Did
as a
he
veteran?
say anybody to
He didn't say nothing to nobody.
He left?
When did you
Yeah,
find out?
you know as much as I know. I found out going in the second half of the game. Coming out, they said he's not coming out, he retired. So.
Unbelievable. And really, now Vontae Davis has cemented his legacy as a quitter. I mean, he's been to 2 Pro
That's
Bowls.
his epitaph.
Yeah, he's had experience in the league. He's had production in the league. Whenever his name comes up in NFL history from now on, it'll be, oh, that's the guy that quit on his team at halftime. Good. Good luck with that.
Vontae Q Davis, it'll say on his tombstone. Q for quitter in the middle.
We're going through 4-down territory. Second down deals with the Buffalo defense and the amazing turnaround in the second half, really. There was a lot going on the defensive side in the second half. After they gave up 28 points, 4 consecutive touchdown drives for Los Angeles in the first half. Different story in the second half. The Bills came out, I thought, much more focused, much more intense. I believe they put a little bit more emphasis on rushing the passer in the second half. And I think they came up with, Trent Murphy told me they came up with new pass rush gadgets. Whatever it was, it worked because they put a lot more pressure on Phillip Rivers in the second half and were able to shut them down in the second half. By then it was too late.
They used a faster lineup, too. I mean, it was Hughes, Alexander, and Murphy along with Kyle Williams, so a little bit more of a speed element on the defensive front there. And, you know, Coach McDermott was calling the plays in the second half. I don't want to chalk it up solely to that, but it was a change. Coach said after the game they needed a spark, and I think some of his play calling provided that. I also thought that coverages were disguised a little bit better pre-snap because it just seemed to me there was some hesitation from Phillip Rivers.
Where do they go with defensive play calling from here on out with Sean McDermott? He wouldn't rule out continuing to do that in the future yesterday. I wonder what they do with that.
Yeah, he left the door open, no question about it, because we asked, was this just, the media asked, was this just a today's game type of thing where you just needed a spark, you took over play calling duties and that's it? And he wouldn't commit to that. He said, you know, it's to be determined. He said, we want to evaluate that along with a whole lot of other things, you know, here on Monday and probably to a certain degree Tuesday morning.
All right, we're working through 4-down territory. Third down deals with a really important injury. Shady McCoy happened to him as he got hit pretty hard right in the midsection, right at belt level on this play here. And to make matters worse, then he got rolled on by Ryan Gorio, got pushed back in and landed squarely on Shady McCoy's midsection. McCoy held his hand to his midsection. You could tell he was hurt right away, came off the field, came back on the field, played a little bit after that, but then left the game for the entire second half. Now, the first reports late yesterday was that McCoy had suffered fractured ribs. This morning, Ian Rappaport, NFL Network, says the Bills did tests on his ribs this morning, and it will not be classified as a rib fracture. He thought it was last night, learned this morning it is not. That's going to be something we got to keep an eye on, Chris. That is a critical injury to whatever hopes the Bills have moving forward.
Right, and I know there were reports out there also that he intended to try to play through it. If he does, you would assume he's wearing a flak jacket, but we'll obviously know more and get an official report from Coach McDermott, who's scheduled to address the media at 4 p.m. today.
Yeah, we'll have to track that all week long. And finally, to fourth down in our fourth down territory. Back to the defensive side of the ball and the turnaround by the defense, limiting the Chargers to 65 yards total in the second half. The veteran, Lorenzo Alexander, played a major role in this. They lined him up different spots. This goes back to the gadget looks that Trent Murphy was talking about. And Lorenzo was extremely effective and productive, I thought, in the second half, making a lot of plays when, you know, yes, the game had probably been settled by then, but it was good to see the defense come around and Lorenzo led the way.
Yeah, I mean, Trent Murphy said Lorenzo is a monster. And, you know, you want to put somebody in the pass rush, I think that guy earned some more time on passing downs. I mean, batted pass, stripped the ball out of Phillip Rivers. I mean, he was not going to take no for an answer in that game, and that was just the leadership on the field. It's one thing to lead vocally, and Lorenzo does that, Kyle does that, but when you can back it up with your play like he did in the second half, young guys are going to listen to that guy because he puts his money where his mouth is.
And you can tell how upset he was about Vontae Davis moving. in the locker room.
Yeah.
He really was. All right, that gets us through 4-down territory with Lorenzo Alexander on 4th down. Let's hear from you. Let's get some crowd noise in here. Some thoughts from the crowd on what you're thinking about today. Crowd noise as we move on through the Bills Monday Morning Breakdown. We're taking your responses on Twitter and on Facebook, and some of the responses today deal with Vontae Davis, Lior Melamed. Who's going to step up and replace Vontae Davis? Anyone on the free agent market? Not likely, Chris, right?
Yeah, but it is. You want to talk about precariously thin. I mean, they were thin going into the Baltimore game. Vontae Davis was inactive for that game. So now you're here in week 2. You lose Phillip Gaines to an injury. Taron Johnson, what's his status? Coming back from a shoulder injury suffered in week 1. So technically you have 2 guys trying to come back from injury in Gaines and in Taron Johnson. I mean, that essentially leaves you with Lafayette Pitts and Trey White. Now you do have Ryan Lewis and the rookie, the undrafted rookie Levi Wallace on the practice squad. I anticipate at least one of those guys are going to be called up to the active roster at some point this week because you need legs right now more than anything else. And if maybe there's a waiver wire pickup or someone out on the street that you think can help you that has some measure of familiarity. I know Leonard Johnson, the nickel corner here last year, was cut by the Giants during final cuts. I'll have to check to see if he's still out on the street and available. But there's a guy that has played in your system and knows how to play nickel. If Taron Johnson isn't ready, that might be an option that you turn to.
All right, we'll keep an eye on that all week long. Also from the crowd noise, a lot of questions about the offensive line. Stephen Goings sends a Facebook question in. What can be done to help the offensive line give Josh Allen more time to throw the ball? You know what? My first answer would be Josh Allen can help himself by getting rid of the ball quickly, Chris. And yes, there's not going to be any magic number or anything they can do to bring in a player to provide pass protection help, but I think Allen can help himself by getting ready to get rid of the ball a little quicker.
Right, and Brian Dable did do a couple of things to try to help the protection scheme as well. He went with heavier personnel in the second half, more 2 tight end sets. He even went with a 6-man offensive line, bringing Marshall Newhouse on as a tackle eligible to try to help with some of the protection scheme, also to try to help in the run blocking as well to a certain extent. But I think there are elements in there where you say, yes, get it out a little quicker, Josh. Maybe go to your first or second read. Don't wait for that third one downfield to open up. Maybe look a bit less for that giant play. And again, get back to taking what the defense gives you. And more often than not, a defense will give you the underneath short stuff. Take that to at least help yourself get into a rhythm throwing the ball. I think that was one thing that was absent from Josh's game yesterday. It just seemed hard for him to get into some kind of passing rhythm where he could string positive passing plays together.
I agree. One more from crowd noise, and of course at 0-2 fans are looking for help from the outside. And this tweet comes in. Get Josh Gordon, please.
All caps, you notice. The only thing we're missing there are exclamation points.
Look, Gordon's probably going to be traded today by the Browns.
Yeah.
I don't know what the exchange would be from the Bills or anybody else with a guy who really hasn't played a meaningful down in a long time in the NFL. He doesn't seem to fit with the culture they're trying to build here, but these are desperate times for the Buffalo Bills. Who knows?
It's hard to say and to gauge just what the Bills might be interested in. It's not like they haven't dealt with Cleveland before. I'm not insinuating that that's going to happen. I think the most attractive thing about Josh Gordon, aside from his dynamic skill set, is the fact that contract-wise, he's pretty cheap over the next 2 years. So I think that's what's created what the national reporters are saying is a very defined market for him right now. You know, you'd be surprised that there is a market for him, but talent sometimes overshadows some of the demons that he himself has been battling over the past couple of years.
It'd be hard to rely on a guy who's been nothing but
You're 100% right on
for
that.
so long. All right, let's get into now the 2-minute drill and take a look at some of the other issues going on around the NFL. The 2-minute drill, and we start with our old buddy Ryan Fitzpatrick. Fitzmagic is back, maybe better than ever. Ryan Fitzpatrick threw for 402 yards, 4 touchdowns in Tampa Bay's 27-21 win over the Philadelphia Eagles. Throws for 400 yards for the second straight week. Filling in for Jameis Winston, he may not come out. Good to see Fitz having so much success down there in Tampa Bay.
I'll raise your 4 touchdown passes and give you 6 because that's what Pat Mahomes had for the Chiefs against Pittsburgh at Heinz Field. Getting Travis Kelce involved in the game after a down week 1. Everybody's focused on Tyreek Hill, and though he did have a touchdown, he went to Kelce a lot more in that game.
The Cleveland Browns are gamers at least. A minute 20 left in the game, down by 6 to New Orleans. They hit this touchdown pass to tie it up at 18. You think, okay, Browns hit the extra point. No, they would not. And then the Saints made a field goal to go up 21 to 18. Browns down by 3. They have this short field goal attempt, and it's missed by Gonzalez. Zane Gonzalez pushed it to the right. He missed 2 of them wide right in the final seconds, and the Saints hang on for the victory.
Got another tie for you. What do we got? 2 weeks?
2 ties.
2 ties. I mean, it's unbelievable. But Minnesota climbs back into the football game. They pull even at 29. Here's the extra point or the field goal to win it in overtime. Pushed wide right. Rookie kicker Daniel Carson missed 3 kicks in this game.
They don't look now, but the Dolphins are on top of the AFC East with a win yesterday in the Meadowlands against the Jets. Ryan Tannehill was outstanding, 17 of 23, 168 yards. He also ran for 44 yards in this game. Tannehill has won 9 of his last 10 starts, going back more than a year ago. That's amazing stat, but the Dolphins are rolling.
And then the Jaguars avenged their AFC Championship game loss from last year's postseason against the Patriots down in Duval. God, that is the worst chant I've ever heard in the entire NFL. But Bortles is sharp. Keelan Cole has a big day for the Jags, over 100 yards receiving and a touchdown. Bortles spreads the ball around, and the Jaguars make a late 11-point lead stand up. They win 31-20, drop the Patriots to 1-1.
And that's our 2-minute drill. All right, a look ahead to what's coming up this week here at One Bills Drive. Obviously, the Vikings out there on Sunday. But before we get to that, Chris, the Bills have some questions to answer as we look ahead. And we start with the lack of depth at cornerback. You mentioned it. Even one of the respondents on Twitter said, what are they going to do? They got to bring in some bodies.
I think there's a promotion from the practice squad coming. I think that's unquestionable because you don't need just one. You need 2 based on the injury situation with Taron Johnson with the shoulder injury, missed Sunday's game. With that injury, we'll have to see how he makes his way through the week this week. And then, as we mentioned, Phillip Gaines has the elbow injury, could not return to the game yesterday, even after Vontae Davis up and quit. So, you've got numbers to fill there. You are precariously thin at that position. I have to believe they're going to be scouring the waiver wire and looking for anybody on the street.
Also in the week ahead, I think the news will be dominated by the status of LaShawn McCoy, right? Still Buffalo's #1 offensive weapon, left the game with rib injury. We're told this morning it is not broken ribs, so that's, I guess, a bit of a break. But we'll find out this week whether McCoy can practice this week and get ready to play because they definitely need him against a very good Minnesota team.
Right, and then, maybe to a lesser extent, the Tywan Jones injury, which I think for more than any other reason was just scary in nature, having taken a shot, I believe it looked like, from the shoulder pad of that Chargers player when he tried to scoop the ball up and get out of the end zone. Fortunately for Tywan, that rule is in place that as soon as a helmet pops off somebody's head, the play is ruled dead, as the Bills were fortunate to get a touchback on that play because of that. But he was, I don't know if you could see it from your vantage point, Murph, but I was looking through my binoculars. Tywan was bleeding from his head. There was visible blood coming out of his head, so he'll obviously get reevaluated again here Monday morning. Again, Coach McDermott addressing the media at 4. Hopefully he can shed a little bit more light on it and at least let everybody know that Tywan is relatively okay. Whether he's in concussion protocol is to be determined, and that's bad enough, but it looked really bad.
And of course, way out a week ahead is the Vikings game, the first of 2 straight road games against 2 outstanding teams. So the Bills are definitely up against it. We'll talk about that game. We'll talk about yesterday's game, and we join you with One Bills Live. Myself, Steve Tasker, Chris Brown will join us noon to 3 on WGR Sports Radio 550 and on MSG on the television side. Chris will have plenty of updates on the website as well. Thanks for joining us today. We'll see you again next Monday for our Bills Monday Morning Breakdown.